You know that feeling when you wake up at 3 a.m. and something just clicks. When suddenly everything makes sense in a way it never did in daylight. That's what happened to me. Except I didn't just wake up. I woke up, packed a bag, and walked out of the life everyone else had designed for me. They were all sleeping. My parents in their bedroom down the hall. My fiancé beside me, his arm draped across my waist like a claim of ownership. The house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I was 26 years old. And I'd never made a single major decision for myself. Not one. And that morning, before the sun could rise and wake everyone up, I changed that. This is the story of how I disappeared before dawn. And how everything they'd carefully constructed fell apart without me there to hold it together. Let me back up. Because you're probably wondering what kind of life someone runs away from at 4 a.m. on a random Tuesday in March. From the outside I had everything. And I mean everything. I was engaged to Derek Hartman, yes, those Hartmans. His father owned half the commercial real estate in our city. We lived in a renovated brownstone in the historic district that had been featured in Architectural Digest. I worked at my father's law firm, on track to make junior partner by 30. My wedding was planned for June. 14 months of planning. 400 guests. A dress that cost more than most people's cars. We had cake tastings and flower arrangements and a string quartet booked. My mother had a binder, actually, 3 binders, filled with timelines, vendor contracts, and seating charts that she updated weekly. I went to charity galas. I played tennis at the country club. I had brunch with the other lawyers' wives and fiancé as every Sunday at the same restaurant where we always ordered the same things. My life ran like clockwork. And I was absolutely, completely, suffocatingly miserable. But here's the thing about that kind of misery, it's quiet. It doesn't announce itself, it seeps in slowly. Like water damage behind a wall. You don't notice it until one day you realize the whole structure is rotting from the inside. The first crack appeared 6 months before I left. I was at work, reviewing a contract for one of Dad's biggest clients. Corporate merger stuff. Boring as hell but important, apparently. My office had a window that looked out over the city, and I remember staring at it, watching people walk by on the street below. There was this woman, probably around my age, wearing ripped jeans and a backpack, carrying a guitar case. She stopped right below my window, set down the case and just played. Right there on the sidewalk. People tossed money into the open case. She was smiling. And I thought, when was the last time I did something just because I wanted to? I couldn't remember. I went home that night and mentioned to Derek that maybe I'd like to learn guitar. You know what he said? He laughed. Actually laughed and said, "Babe, you don't have time for hobbies. Besides, we'd have to soundproof a room. And that's not in the budget until after the wedding." Not in the budget. The man who just bought a vintage Porsche told me $100 guitar wasn't in the budget. That's when I started noticing everything else. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the curse of awareness. I started paying attention to my own life like I was watching someone else live it. And what I saw terrified me. Every morning, I woke up at 5:45 a.m. Derek liked breakfast at 6:30, eggs, toast, coffee, fresh fruit. I made it while he showered. We ate together while he read the financial news on his tablet and I mentally prepared for my day at the firm. I wore what Derek liked. Pencil skirts, blouses in neutral tones, heels that made my feet scream by 2 p.m. He said I looked professional, elegant. I used to love wearing jeans and oversized sweaters. I owned exactly 2 pairs of jeans now. And I only wore them when I went to the gym. Which was 4 times a week, because Derek said we needed to good for the wedding photos. He had a trainer. I had a trainer. We had couples sessions where someone named Chad yelled at us to do burpees while upbeat music blasted. I hated every second of it. My friends, or the people I called friends, were all from Derek's circle or my parents' circle. Wives and daughters of business partners. Women who talked about vacation homes, and which private schools their future children would attend. When I tried to bring up books I'd read, or documentaries I'd watched, the conversation would politely shift back to renovations or wedding planning. I felt like I was disappearing. Like every day. A little more of who I actually was got painted over until I was just this smooth, blank canvas that other people'd project their expectations onto. 3 weeks before I left, we had dinner with my parents and Derek's parents. This big formal thing at some restaurant where the menu didn't have prices and the waiter described every dish like it was a work of art. They were talking about our future. Our 5-year plan. Our 10-year plan. Where we'd live, when we'd have kids, what partnership track I'd be on at the firm, which boards Derek would join. And I'm sitting there, eating $70 sea bass, and I realized no one had asked me what I wanted. Not once in this entire conversation had anyone said, "What do you think?" or "How do you feel about this?" So I interrupted. Right in the middle of my future mother-in-law explaining how we'd need a bigger house in the right school district before we started having children. I said, "What if I don't want children?" You would have thought I'd announced I was joining a cult. The table went silent. Everyone stared at me. Derek's mom recovered first. She laughed. That same dismissive laugh Derek had given me about the guitar, and said, "Oh honey, every woman thinks that until she holds her own baby." My mother nodded. "It's just cold feet. Completely normal before a wedding." Derek reached over and squeezed my hand. "We've talked about this, babe. 2 kids, remember? A boy and a girl if we're lucky." Had we talked about it? Or had he told me, and I just nodded along? I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror, staring at this woman in a cream-colored dress with perfectly styled hair and makeup that had taken 40 minutes that morning. I didn't recognize her. I didn't decide to leave that night. The decision came in pieces over days. I started doing research, quietly. During lunch breaks, I'd sit in my car and search things on my phone. How to start over. Leaving your old life behind. Starting fresh in a new city. I opened a bank account Derek didn't know about. Just a small one, at a different bank. I started transferring money, nothing huge that would be noticed. Just a little from each paycheck. My escape fund, I called it in my head. I made a list of what I'd need. What I could fit in one suitcase and one backpack. What was actually mine versus what was ours or theirs. Turned out, not much was actually mine. The furniture in our brownstone, Derek's, or gifts from our parents. The car I drove, leased under Derek's company. My clothes, mostly bought on shopping trips with my mother or Derek's preferences in mind. Even my laptop was technically property of my father's law firm. What was mine? Some books, a few photos, my grandmother's necklace. Some childhood stuffed animals in a box in the closet. A journal I'd kept sporadically since college. That was it, 26 years of life, and I could pack everything that was truly mine in 2 bags. The thought was terrifying. And liberating. The day before I left was completely ordinary. Aggressively ordinary. I went to work. Sat through meetings, reviewed contracts. Had lunch with 2 other associates where we complained about billable hours. Smiled, nodded, played the part. After work, I went to a fitting for my bridesmaid dress for my cousin's wedding. My mother was there, my aunt, 3 cousins. We drank champagne. Well, they drank champagne, I pretended to, and they talked about my upcoming wedding. Only 3 months away. Derek is such a catch, you're so lucky. I smiled. I agreed. I said all the right things. Then I went home. Derek was working late, some deal closing, he texted. I made dinner for myself, pasta with vegetables. I ate it standing at the counter, looking out at our tiny backyard. It was March and there were these small purple flowers starting to push up through the soil. Crocuses, I think. They looked so determined, forcing their way up through the cold ground just to bloom. I washed my plate. I went upstairs, I took a shower. And then I started packing. I was methodical about it. Calm. Like I was packing for a business trip instead of vanishing from my entire life. 1 suitcase, 1 backpack. Practical clothes, jeans, t-shirts, sweaters, a warm jacket. Comfortable shoes. Basic toiletries. My laptop charger. I was taking the laptop, they could bill me for it. Documents. Birth certificate. Social security card. Passport. I found them in Derek's file cabinet in his office. He kept all our important papers, organized, controlled. Money. I had about $8,000 in my secret account. I'd maxed out 2 credit cards in my name only, another $6,000. Buying prepaid cards and gift cards over the past weeks. I'd told Derek I was shopping for wedding stuff. He never asked to see receipts. I packed the books that mattered, the journal. The photos of me as a kid, before all this. My grandmother's necklace, the one thing I owned that no one had given me with expectations attached. And I wrote letters. 3 letters. 1 to my parents. 1 to Derek. 1 to my best friend from college, Mia, the only person from my before Life I still talk to, even though we drifted apart. I thought about what to say. How do you explain running away? How do you make people understand when they've never felt trapped in their own life? To my parents, I wrote, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted for me. But I can't live the life you've planned anymore. I need to find out who I am when I'm not being who you need me to be. Please don't look for me. I'll reach out when I'm ready. I love you. To Derek, I wrote, you're not a bad person. But we're not right for each other. You fell in love with the version of me that fits into your life. I don't know who I actually am yet, but I know it's not her. You deserve someone who wants the same future you do. I'm sorry I can't be that person. The ring is on the dresser. To Mia. I wrote, remember sophomore year when we stayed up all night talking about where we'd go after graduation? All the places we wanted to see, the things we wanted to do. I forgot about all of that. I let myself forget. I'm going to remember now. I'm going to find those dreams again. Thank you for being the only person who knew the real me. I'll call you when I land somewhere. I put the letters in envelopes. Left them on the kitchen counter where they'd be found in the morning. Derek came home around 11. I heard him downstairs, moving around the kitchen. He came up to bed at midnight, smelling like scotch and cologne. He kissed my forehead. Abe, you awake? I kept my breathing steady. Pretended to sleep. He changed. Brushed his teeth, climbed into bed. Within 10 minutes, he was snoring softly. I lay there for 3 hours, wide awake staring at the ceiling. At 7 a.m., I got up. I moved like a ghost. Quiet. Careful, every creak of the floorboard sonic thunder in my ears. I changed into traveling clothes in the bathroom. Jeans. Comfortable shirt. Sneaker. My warmest jacket. I got my bags from where I'd hidden them in back of the closet behind winter coats. I took one last look at the bedroom. At Derek. Sleeping peacefully, one arm stretched out to where I'd been lying. At the life I was leaving behind, I didn't feel sad, I felt light. Like I'd been holding my breath underwater for years and was finally surfacing. I walked downstairs. Put the letters on the counter. Took off my engagement ring, 3 carats, princess cut, platinum band, and left it on top of Derek's letter. My hand looked naked without it. Felt lighter. I called an Uber to take me to the train station. It arrived in 4 minutes. The driver didn't ask questions, thank God, just loaded my bags and drove through the empty, dark streets. The train station was almost deserted at 4:30 a.m. A few homeless people sleeping on benches. One tired-looking worker at the ticket counter. Where to? He asked. I thought about this. Where do you go when you're running away from your entire life? What's the next train heading west? I asked. He checked his computer. Chicago. Leaves in 20 minutes. 1 ticket please. I'd never been to Chicago. Didn't know anyone there. It was perfect. The train was maybe a quarter full. I found a seat by the window, stored my bags, and sat down. As we pulled out of the station, the sun was just starting to lighten the sky. That pale gray, blue of early morning, before the world wakes up. I watched my city disappear behind me. The skyline, the neighborhoods, everything familiar falling away, and I sat crying. Not sad crying. Not scared crying. This weird, overwhelming relief crying. I was free. For the first time in my adult life, no one knew where I was or I was doing. No one had expectations. No calendar controlled my day. No one needed me to be anyone but whoever I decided to be. The woman across the aisle, older, maybe 60, wearing a purple scarf, offered me a tissue. You okay, honey? I took the tissue, wiped my eyes, and I smiled, really smiled, maybe for the first time in months. Yet I said, I really am. I turned off my phone somewhere in Pennsylvania. I knew what would happen when they woke up and found me gone. I didn't want to hear it. I imagined it though. Derek waking up, reaching for me, finding empty space. Confused at first. Calling my name. Checking the bathroom, going downstairs, finding the letters, reading mine. The words I'd agonized over, the explanation that would never be enough. Him calling my parents, the panic in his voice. She's goffed. There's a letter. My mother's reaction. The tears. The dramatics, the immediate blame. What did you do? What happened? This isn't like her. But it was like me. That was the thing, they just didn't know me well enough to see it. My father would want to call the police. Derek would probably agree. They'd file a missing persons report, except I wasn't missing. I was just gone. The investigation would be brief. I was an adult. I'd left a note, taken my things, No signs of foul play, just a woman who walked away. They'd check my bank accounts. Find the secret one emptied. The trail would end there. My mother would call everyone we knew. The gossip would spread like wildfire. Did you hear about the Thornton girl? Ran away 3 months before her wedding. Just vanished. Can you imagine? The wedding would have to be cancelled. Deposits lost. Invitations already sent. The embarrassment. The scandal. I felt guilty about that. About the money, the inconvenience, the social fallout. But not guilty enough to go back. I got to Chicago around 3 p.m. Walked out of Union Station into a city I'd never seen before. It was cold March in Chicago, as apparently still winter. The wind off the lake cut through my jacket. I had no plan. No hotel reservation. No agenda, so I started walking. I found a cheap hotel in a neighbor I later learned was called Wicker Park. Nothing fancy. The kind of place that rented by the week and didn't ask too many questions. The room was small, clean enough. A bed, a desk, a tiny bathroom. A window that looked out at a brick wall. It was perfect. I dropped my bags and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The adrenaline was wearing off, and reality was setting in. I had no job. No plan, no support system. I was in a strange city where I didn't know a single person, and I never felt more alive. The first week was survival mode. I spent my days walking around the city, getting my bearings. I bought a cheap prepaid phone, no smartphone, just basic calls and texts. Listed it under a name that wasn't mine. I looked for work. Nothing in law. I wasn't ready to use my real credentials, and honestly, I never wanted to see the inside of a law office again. I took a job at a bookstore. A small independent place in Andersonville. The owner, Ruth, was this 60-something woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She asked me 3 questions. Can you show up on time? Do you like books? Are you running from something? I answered yes, yes, and yes. She hired me on the spot. Everyone's running from something. Kid, long as you do the work, I don't care. The pay was terrible. Minimum wage, no benefits. I'd gone from a law associate salary to making barely enough to cover my hotel room and food. I'd never been happier going to work in my life. Here's what happens when you strip away everything familiar: you get to choose who to become. I started small. I stopped wearing makeup every day. Just couldn't be bothered. My skin actually cleared up. I let my hair go back to its natural color. Turns out I'm a darker blonde than the highlights I'd been getting for years suggested. I bought clothes from thrift stores. Things I actually liked, not things that looked professional or appropriate. Banty shirts. Comfortable jeans. A leather jacket that was worn and perfect. I started saying no to things. Want to grab a drink after work? No thanks. Can you cover my shift? No. I have plans. Even when I didn't have plans. Even when the plans were just sitting in my hotel room reading. No had been the hardest word in my vocabulary. It became my favorite. I made friends slowly. Ruth introduced me to her Tuesday night book club. A group of women ranging from 20s to 70s, who met at a wine bar and discussed everything from literature to politics to their terrible dating lives. They didn't know anything about my past. I was just Sam. I'd started going by Sam instead of Samantha. It felt like a clean break. Sam who worked at the bookstore. Sam who was new to Chicago. Sam who was figuring things out. They accepted that without question. I turned my real phone back on exactly 1 month after I left. There were 247 missed calls, 189 text messages, 43 voicemails. Just read through the texts, watching the progression. Derek's texts went from concern to angry to bargaining to bitter to final silence. My mother's were similar. Concern, anger, guilt tripping, manipulation, and eventually, coldness. My father had sent exactly 3 texts: come home. We need, disappointed. That last one hurt more than I expected. Maya had sent the only messages I read all the way through. They got your letter. Holy shit. Pirata wafu, were you okay? Don't tell me where you are if you don't want to. Just let me know you're alive. Checked in with your mom. She's furious but you're not dead, so I call that a win. Still thinking about our late night talks. Go find those dreams. I'm rooting for you. I call just her. I'll call that God Sam. Hearing her say my name, my new name, felt like coming home. Hey Mia. Where are you? Are you okay? Your mom called me like 15 times. Derek's mom showed up at my office. It's been chaos. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm good, actually. Good. You disappeared in the middle of the night and you're good. Yeah. I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't sound crazy. It sounds like the bravest thing I've ever heard. I started crying again. Different tears this time. You think so? Sam, I've been watching you disappear for years. Every time I saw you, there was less of you there. You were becoming this ghost version of yourself. Whatever you're doing wherever you are, if you feel more alive than you did there, then hell yes. I think you did the right thing. We talked for 2 hours. I told her about Chicago, about the bookstore, about starting over. She told me about the aftermath. The cancelled wedding. Derek's family had apparently tried to sue my parents for the costs, but it went nowhere. The gossip that had eventually died down. How my mother told people I was dealing with some personal issues and taking time to find myself, which technically wasn't a lie. Are they looking for me? I asked. Not actively. Your dad hired a private investigator for like a week, but you covered your tracks well. No credit card use, no social media, nothing. It's like you vanished. Good. Your mom asks if I've heard from you every time she sees me. What do you tell her? That I haven't, which was true until today. Sam. Do you want me to tell them you're okay? I thought about it. Maybe eventually. But not yet. Okay, your secret's safe with me. By September, I had a rhythm. I'd moved out of the hotel and into a tiny studio apartment. Seriously tiny, I could touch the kitchen counter from my bed, but it was mine. I'd signed the lease with my own name. Paid the deposit with money I'd earned. The bookstore had promoted me to assistant manager. Ruth said I had good eye for what sells, and let me start ordering stock and organizing events. I'd started taking classes at a community college. Creative writing. Of all things. Something I'd loved in high school but abandoned because it's not practical. And, you can't make a living as a writer. Maybe I couldn't. But I could take a class and find out if I still loved it. Turned out I did. I'd made real friends, people who knew me as Sam. The bookstore manager who loved mysteries and always had a book recommendation. Who met up for coffee and actually talked about ideas, not just gossip. Who didn't expect me to be anything other than whoever I was that day. I'd started running. Not with a trainer. Not to look good for photos. Just because I liked how it felt. Early mornings along the lake, watching the sun come up over the water. I'd gone on a few dates. Nothing serious, a guy from my writing class. A woman I met at book club. Just exploring. Learning what I actually wanted instead of what I was supposed to want. I didn't have much money. My apartment was tiny. My job wouldn't impress anyone from my old life. But I woke up every morning excited to be alive. That hadn't happened in years. In October something unexpected happened. I published a story. It was from my creative writing class. A short piece about a woman who walks away from her wedding. Thinly veiled autobiography, my professor called it, but she said it was good. Strong voice. Honest emotion. She encouraged me to submit it to a literary magazine. I did, expecting nothing. They published it. Paid me $200 for it. My name. My new name, in print. I stood in a coffee shop, holding the magazine, staring at those words, by Sam Thornton. I'd kept my last name. Couldn't quite let go of all of it. But seeing it attached to Sam instead of Samantha, attached to something I'd created from my own truth instead of someone else's expectations. I called Mia. I'm a published writer. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. We celebrated over video chat, her with wine in her apartment, me with beer in mine. She'd moved to Boston, was working for a nonprofit she loved. We talked about how different our lives looked from what we'd imagined at 22. Are you happy? She asked me. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah. I said. I actually am. Are you there? You inspired me, you know. I quit my corporate job, took a massive pay cut to work for this organization. My parents think I'm crazy. Probably. But I'm crazy and happy. We should start a club. In December, 9 months after I left, I wrote a letter to my parents. Not the one I'd left on the counter, a new one. A real one. I told them I was okay, I was safe. I was living in a city I wouldn't name, working at a job I loved, building a life that felt like mine. I tried to explain why I'd left. Not to justify it. I'd given up on thinking I could make them understand, but to give them some closure. Maybe. I told them I loved them. I did. I just couldn't live the life they wanted for me anymore. I told them I hoped someday they could forgive me. Not for leaving, I wouldn't apologize for that. But for the way I did it. For the hurt I'd caused. I told them that when I was ready I'd like to talk to them. Not to come back. Not to reconcile into the old patterns. But to try to build something new, where they knew the real me instead of the version they created. I mailed it to their house. Didn't include a return address. My mother called Mia 3 days later. Mia texted me. "Your mom got your letter," she cried. "Said she's glad you're okay. Asked me to tell you they love you if I hear from you." It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. March rolled around again. 1 year since the morning I'd walked out. I thought about marking it somehow. A celebration. A moment of reflection. Instead, I just lived my day. Woke up at 7, made coffee in my tiny kitchen. Went for a run along the lake, still cold, but I'd learned to dress for it. Opened the bookstore at 9. Helped customers find books. Argued good-naturedly with Ruth about whether we should stock more romance novels. Taught a creative writing workshop at 4. Ruth had started letting me use the bookstore for community events. 6 people showed up, ranging from 17 to 72. We workshopped a piece about a man discovering his wife's secret life. It was beautiful. Met friends for dinner at a Thai place we loved. Laughed until my sides hurt about something stupid. Made plans for the weekend, came home, read for a while. Fell asleep in my own bed, in my own apartment, in my own life. It was ordinary. Perfectly ordinary. And it was everything. Here's what don't tell you about walking away from your life. It doesn't fix everything. You carry yourself with you, wherever you go. Your issues, your fears, your learned patterns, they all come along for the ride. I still struggled with saying no sometimes. Still caught myself people-pleasing. Still had days where I doubted every decision. Starting over is hard, really hard. There were nights I ate ramen for dinner 3 days in a row because I was broke. Days I felt lonely in a city full of people. Moments I missed my mom. Even though our relationship had been complicated. But here's what else they don't tell you. When you build a life based on what you actually want, even the hard days feel different. Because you chose them. You're not suffering through someone else's vision of your life. You're living through the messy, complicated reality of your own. I don't know what my future looks like. I might stay in Chicago. I might move again. I might go back to law eventually. Or I might keep working at the bookstore and writing on the side. I might reconcile with my parents. I might not. I might fall in love again. I might not. But whatever happens, it'll be my choice, my story, my life. That morning, when I left while they slept, I didn't just walk away from a wedding and a brownstone and a career path. I walked toward myself. The version of me that loves books and writing and early morning runs. The me that says no when she means no and yes when she means yes. The me that's still figuring it all out but doing it on her own terms. They planned a future for me. A whole life, mapped out in detail. And when I left, it all fell apart. But I didn't. I finally, for the first time in my adult life, fell together. And that's worth everything I left behind. If you're watching this and feeling trapped in a life that doesn't fit anymore, whether it's a relationship, a career, a place, or just expectations that are slowly crushing you, I want you to know something. You can leave. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the way I did, but you can make different choices. You can say no. You can start small. One decision at a time, reclaiming pieces of yourself. It won't be easy, people might be hurt, there won't be consequences. But the consequence of staying in a life that's slowly killing your spirit. That's worse. I left while they slept. You might leave in broad daylight. With conversations and explanations. You might leave gradually, changing one thing at a time until your life looks completely different. You might not physically leave at all. But instead leave behind the version of yourself that was never really you. However you do it, whatever it looks like. Free yourself from their future. And build your own.